Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight. Our Lord, our rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. You may be seated. Well, this week we see in our gospel reading a continued motif of water in this season of Epiphany. If you remember last week, we saw water being used to signify the obedience and the sinless nature of Christ in his baptism. We saw as Jesus was affirmed and celebrated by a voice from heaven as he ascended from the waters of the Jordan at the hands of John the Baptist. Remember too that the baptism in the Jordan would also foreshadow his death and immersion into the full weight of judgment against humanity. He would bear the sin in his body, and his body would be broken, immersed into the judgment of God on the cross. But just like the rising from the waters of the Jordan, Jesus would rise from the grave as well, affirmed and glorified. So this week we switch gears a little bit, but we still see water being used as a central part of our gospel story. We see it as a conduit for the miraculous power of Jesus at a very human event, a wedding. It's amazing how your feeling towards weddings can shift based on the season of life that you're in. When you're very, very young, they're mostly boring affairs with the slim sliver of hope that somebody's going to give you a piece of cake at the very end. Interestingly enough, I've started to observe, especially some of my older relatives who seem to approach weddings with the same attitude. It's incredibly boring, but somebody's going to give me a piece of cake at the end if I can just hang on long enough. Somewhere in the middle, though, between the perspective of a young child and somebody that's maybe much, much older, right in the middle, maybe in the teens, early 20s, somewhere in there, you start to look at weddings as maybe foreshadowing something that might happen to you. Maybe you think about the type of person that you want to marry or the type of ceremony that you would like to have. Then for some, the day actually comes, right? The big day is upon you. You're the one getting married. You've planned for the reception. You've made decisions about flowers and food and colors and all that stuff. You're the one walking down the aisle. You're the one, you and your spouse are the ones actually being celebrated. Inevitably, though, as I've seen with every wedding that I've ever been to, something goes wrong. Maybe it's something small, maybe it's something very minute, but something always seems to go wrong. Maybe the ring bearer refuses to walk down the aisle. Maybe the flower girl takes this opportunity to throw an epic tantrum. Maybe a member of the wedding party gets mad and just refuses to show up. Something always happens. I recently officiated a wedding back in November, and as I'm introducing the sacred sacrament of Holy Communion, giving the full story of its theological significance and its symbolic importance in a wedding ceremony, I give this 3 to 4 minute overview of this act, and then I invite the wedding couple to join me at the table. We walk over, and it's empty. There's nothing there. There's no bread, there's no wine. Somebody's forgotten to put this out. So we just kind of stand there awkwardly for a second, and then I just kind of walk back and we go about our business. It's just the nature of a wedding. Something always just kind of goes wrong. In John 2, though, a bigger problem seems to present itself at the wedding where Jesus and his disciples and his mother were attending. The wine runs out at the reception. The reception is now falling flat. The party is screeching to a halt. The joy of this special occasion is devolving into a mundane affair where glasses of water are going to be passed around. Of course, the wedding planner is panicking, I'm sure. He's running around trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do. How are they going to salvage this celebration? The whispers start to move around the room as people realize that the bottles are empty and no more wine is being brought out by the waitstaff. Mary looks at Jesus and makes sure that he knows there is a need. If something miraculous doesn't happen, then the joyous occasion turns into a moment of extreme embarrassment and shame. Mary turns to Jesus and, as if he didn't already know, makes sure that he understands the gravity of the situation. Of course, Jesus responds to her in such a way that countless scholars have tried to diagnose his words to his mother. Woman, what is that to me? What is that to me? Doesn't that seem a little harsh? It seems a little harsh when you just read through it. But I don't think this is emotional aloofness or an emotional distance between Jesus and his mother. I think Jesus is saying this to her with a twinkle in his eye. Maybe a little wink. Something about his response or the emotional connection that they shared lets Mary know that Jesus does, despite what he may say, intend to do something about it. She knows his mercy. She knows his love towards humanity. She knows that he longs to be a conduit for joy and celebration at this beautiful occasion. And I think we can draw this conclusion, even though I'm kind of reading into it a little bit. I think we can draw this conclusion because of her reaction. She's not offended by his response to her. She doesn't get upset. She knows he's up to something. And in fact, as soon as he responds to this woman, what is that to me? My time's not yet come. What does she do right after? She tells the servants, whatever he's going to tell you to do, make sure you follow it to the most minute of details. He instructs the servants to fill the jars with water, these 6 jars used for ritual purification rites, Jewish ceremonies of purification. And with the merciful and the miraculous word of Christ, the water transforms into new wine. Now, we're not talking about just a few, gallon jugs here. We have to do a little translating with the Old English. Does anybody know what the term firkin means? Does anybody use a firkin of measurement in their kitchen when they're cooking at home? Okay, just wanted to make sure. This would have probably been at least about 120 gallons of wine. 120 gallons. Just think if there was 100 people there, 200 people there, this would have been 600 bottles of wine that all of a sudden appeared. Extravagance is at the heart of this miracle. I think it's clear from the text that God's blessing is coming through Jesus in the form of abundance. He turns our mourning into dancing. He doesn't just stop our sadness and make us not sad anymore. He completely reverses it to the extreme. This is a miracle of transformation. And I think the lesson for us this morning is that this is the possibility that a life with Christ offers. He will take the common and transform it into the extraordinary. He could have miraculously just filled these empty jars with wine, right? That could have been the miracle. He could have snapped his finger and something that was once nothing, empty space, is all of a sudden filled with wine to the brim. That's not what he does. Instead, he chooses to change an existing, everyday substance, tap water, into something glorious. What a beautiful picture of what God does to our hearts. He could have started over. He could have started over. Remember, we kind of start to see this a little bit in Genesis 6, right? The human experiment is failing. Everybody is wicked and sinful and violent towards each other. God seems to be very close to just hitting the reset button and saying, this didn't work, let's wipe them all out, let's start over from nothing. That's not what he does. He takes Noah and his family and starts over from there. He takes what is and turns it into something miraculous. Instead, he chooses to take you and I and to transform us into something else, something extraordinary. New creatures in the mold of Christ himself, water into wine. Sinful, rebellious men and women are gloriously changed into adopted sons and daughters of the King. So from this story, I think there are a number of kind of broad theological themes that are packed here that we could unpack. But on the surface, one of the lessons that we can't overlook about this story is that God cares for us, even in the seemingly non-spiritual, earthly activities of our lives. I think all too often we don't go to God because we feel that whatever our needs are at the moment aren't spiritual enough for his attention. God, I've got this water bill that I really need to pay. I'd really like to get my son a bike for Christmas. I could really use a better job. We guilt ourselves into not praying about the things that our hearts desire or things that make us anxious because we think that they're not holy enough somehow. If I'm not praying about, missions or the impoverished or the lost, then my needs, my prayers aren't really going to be important to God. God, we just ran out of wine, and I don't want the newly married couple to feel embarrassed. The miracle of Cana tells us this: Christ is already present in our circumstances. He's already here. He's already in those moments. He's already attending to you. He's already there with you. We just need to learn to approach him with our needs, however mundane, however earthly. Invite him into our problems. Cast our cares, whatever they may be, on him. Nothing is too unspiritual or mundane because he cares for us. So as I wrap up here, know this: God joins us in life's moments of joy and sorrow. All we need to do, our responsibility, is to recognize his presence and be quick to give our anxieties to the one whose mercy extends far beyond our greatest needs. Amen.